All right, people, welcome to another episode of The MILPA Show. And today we have three guests that actually work at MILPA. We have Cristian Franco Jr., who is the training and site coordinator at MILPA. We have George Villa, who is the Restoring Promise Programs and Leadership Assistant at MILPA. And then we have Edgar Ernesto Ibarra Gutierrez, the Programs and Leadership Coordinator at MILPA, returning guest. So we're gonna go ahead and start with Cristian, if you wanna go ahead and do some gifts that you wanna manifest right now, and then you could popcorn to George.
Yeah, I think gifts are just, to be here in the space and to be able to continue our journey, our healing journey, and to be able to collaborate as a body, right? Not only, locally, but also regionally through this virtual Zoom platform. And so it's a real gift, that even with everything going on, we're still able to stay, in contact and communicate through the virtual reality world that is Zoom. And that's my gift, but I'll pass it to George.
Thank you, Chris. For me, I have many gifts, but I think one right now, I'd say is my pathway, my upward mobility pathway towards education. I started my first day of master's program at UC Davis today, and because of the help of MILPA with all of their services and community development work that we're doing and we've been able to do, has just been amazing for us. I mean, this is not only my success, but each and every one of y'all's success. To see someone come from an incarceration, the Department of Juvenile Justice, and then go and find their way up to a college is, for me, it's the biggest gift. And I'll pass it to Edgar.
A gift that some of the gifts that I would like to manifest, is just being healthy, y'all. We're living in crazy times, and just being able to say that I haven't been sick, that I can move around, that I have my full capacities. I'm privileged to be able to do many things still, with my body and even my mind. I'm super grateful for that, and thinking about all those folks who are going through it. Hopefully they get those good intentions from me today, and blessings and prayers out their way too, thinking about them as well. And hopefully everybody today has something good to eat. I ate some frijoles, nothing wrong with some frijoles molidos with some queso fresco and some guacamole. Hopefully everybody gets something good to eat today and has a roof over their head también.
Órale, muchas gracias a todos. So I'm going to go ahead and start with what led you to work at MILPA, and if you could tell us a little bit more about your role, and we can start with George, and you could popcorn to Cristian.
Well, so I've been friends with Juan Gomez for maybe over 15 years now, and he approached me before MILPA was in existence if I wanted an opportunity to work with him as an intern, as a paid intern. At first I was like, nope, I don't want to do it. I was still in transitioning from incarceration and on my second year out. And I thought that just moving away and working somewhere else would keep me out of trouble. And going to school also somewhere else would keep me in trouble. But no, unfortunately, he brought me in as an intern, and I got to shadow him in a lot of civic engagement meetings with residents and also other organizations. And because of the connection that I do have in my community, that street cred, it worked out really well. And now that I'm a research associate with the Restoring Promise team with MILPA also, the work that we're doing is extracting data and information and finding out the key issues inside of the prisons and developing solutions for them. So based on racial equity, restorative justice, family engagement, and healing. So it's going inside with those that have the lived experience and getting the information and the data that they possess and what their definitions are of rehabilitation, and us having the applied research lens and sharing it out with the community there, and also the policymakers and the Department of Corrections. So yeah, it's been a process. It's been good. Been here with MILPA going on 7 years now. So I'm blessed, and you know, things have been going good. Hasn't been an easy road, but you know, with ganas, you can do anything, and grit. So that's one thing that I've been able to have, and I'm grateful for that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, George. For myself, you know, I'm formerly incarcerated, system impacted, and from the day that I came home from incarceration at DJJ, where I was incarcerated for a lengthy stay, you know, I've always wanted to come back at some capacity to the facilities because I knew that there were people left behind. I knew that there would be other young people that would replace me in those cells. I knew that, you know, someone had to fight, you know, for restoring the humanity in what is incarceration, right? There's numerous lawsuits that occurred while I was incarcerated at the DJJ, Division of Juvenile Justice. I've seen a lot of things happen in there that I didn't feel were just. And so from the day that I was released, I always had some intention set of coming back at some capacity. I didn't know what capacity that would be. I didn't know where it would be. I didn't know how I would do it, but I knew in my heart that I wanted to come back to continue to help, you know, young people who were in a similar situation as I was when I was a young person. And so, you know, none of that transpired until the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, where I actually ran into George Villa. You know, I ran into him at a boxing match in Oakland, California. We were watching a championship fight. It was Andre Ward. And, you know, I'm a big boxing fan. George is a big boxing fan. You know, we got the Villa, you know, boxing club and sports gym. And so, you know, we met, and we hadn't seen each other in, you know, 15, 16 years. I was incarcerated, you know, with George at one point. And I hadn't seen him in forever. And so we crossed paths, and I said, yo, what are you up to? And he's like, man, you wouldn't believe it. And he said, you know, you remember this person, this person? I said, yeah. He's like, man, we're working together, and we're working on the community. And, you know, we're trying to restore our communities and bring back the values that, you know, that were lost. And well, they were never really lost. They were just, you know, disorganized. And so we started talking, and lo and behold, that conversation led to another conversation with the director of MILPA, Juan Gomez, and we sat down, and I said, yo, like, you know, I don't live in the region, but, you know, here's where my heart is at. You know, what can I do? How can I, you know, how can I make this vision come to fruition? He said, man, it's going to be hard. You know, it's going to take a lot of traveling. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take, you know, some dedication and obviously some building up, right? To ensure that we do the hard work for ourselves before we go in there and do the hard work with the young people. And so it was a journey, you know, it was a journey of you know, letting go of cargas and, like, you know, of healing and you know, really grounding ourselves in the values that is our cultura, you know. And so, you know, to make a long story short, we pushed the initiative to get back into DJJ. We were offered an opportunity under a contract to go in there and do some mentorship and some facilitation of some Joven Noble workshops and developing circles for the young people in there. And man, it's been a blessing, you know. 3 years now with MILPA. We're in our third year of our 3-year contract with DJJ. And you know, a dream that I had, you know, many years ago, you know, developed and came to fruition in this body with this group, you know, under this initiative with MILPA, you know, motivating individual leadership for public advancement. Palabra.
Beautiful. Thank y'all for sharing. And Edgar.
Definitely. I'm the leadership and program coordinator at MILPA. My role there for the last 2.5 years has been mostly around the programs and community organizing in the area. programs such as our what was formerly known as our Youth Equity Department, but now is known as the Talpochicali Youth Leadership Academy, is a 3-month long internship that focuses around culture, consciousness, and movement building. It's a paid internship for young people to get involved and basically get a better understanding of how MILPA does their cultural healing / organizing work, right? And it's been very as for myself personally, it's been eye-opening and life-changing experience as far as just getting to learn and meet young people who are really down and really for their community. And that's been such a blessing, but also being involved in some of the city, county, and statewide policy work that MILPA has been a part of has also been, once again, it's also has shown the layers of the onion, the layers that we need to be able to pull back to get back to our humanity and build that community that we want to see. But the most important thing, you know, that I've learned there and been a part of is just building community, you know, building community just and a lot, I know a lot of times we're always told coming back from incarceration, build different social circles, hang out with your friends, with your family, don't hang out with no one that you knew from the past. But what, you know, and coming here to MILPA, you know, and hanging around with folks who have gone through similar things and that I've known was very encouraging, because everybody was in a path to success. I remember meeting George and he was telling me, I'm about to go to UC Davis. He just graduated, got his bachelor's, now he's in the graduate program. I remember seeing Juan, seeing like different folks that were going through this journey of success. And I was like, man, why can't that be me? And sure enough, you know, along the way and with encouragement from all my peers, all friends and families, because that's what I consider them now. You know, they're not co-workers or peers, they're all friends and family. And with their encouragement, along with my families, you know, I'm now looking at I just started my semester, a quarter today at UC Davis as well. So it's been a journey, y'all, and that wouldn't have happened, you know, without the healing work, you know, and without the opportunity and encouragement from others, you know, and having that example. Most of the time we know of what's there for us, you know. Incarceration, you go back or you end up in the ground. Now this time it wasn't like that. What was being offered to me was, you know, a different pathway to success, a different way, you know, everything that our grandparents, our grandmas, moms, everybody, all those prayers that they did every single night, all throughout the day, that's that. This is it coming true, coming to fruition. And again, you know, MILPA for me, it's been one hell of a place. I've known people there. I've known Juan just kind of like them. I met Juan in a different situation. I met him when I was 13 years old in Santa Cruz County Juvenile Hall, facilitating a Joven Noble. And back then I wasn't listening to nothing, y'all. And it's funny because now I listen to him a lot. And so it's a unique experience, you know, to be able to see everything come back and also seeing Juan, you know. Juan grew up in Watsonville, where I grew up in, and like understanding that this man was able to put something together to give back to all of us, and seeing being able to hear my mother say that she actually appreciates him for giving me the opportunity to be, and how she put in sus palabras, te dio la vida otra vez, because God knows where I would have been at, you know. So I'll say that much, and that's just a little bit of how I ended up coming here, and you know, and I'm still looking forward to the many years to come, y'all, and working and building alongside all the families and friends at MILPA. Palabra.
Amazing. Congratulations to all of you on your success and the pathway that you're heading in. And so I want to jump in a little bit into how SB 823, it's been essentially signed by Governor Newsom, and that is the closure of the Division of Juvenile Justice, DJJ. And so how do you feel personally, or just how do you feel in general about the impending closure of DJJ? And we can start off with Edgar. And if you can popcorn to Cristian.
Okay, definitely. So SB 823 DJJ realignment. Today is actually a historic day. September 30th, the last day the governor needs to sign things into legislation, and he's gonna sign it today. If he hadn't already did it, he's gonna do it, you know, before the night. It means a lot to me, as far as I spent almost 4.5 years in DJJ. Preston, most of my time was in Preston. The remainder of it was when they first closed. After they closed it in 2011, I was one of the few youth that were left there at the end, and ended up finishing my time at Chad. But you know, just thinking about the importance, you know, first and foremost, acknowledging all those young men that went through that place and were scarred physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. Those who are not here with us anymore, you know, thinking about all them and their families, you know, prayers to them, and thinking about those who are still out here, you know, trying to do it, trying to just survive, trying to manage it, you know, and some of them are, you know, and some of them are doing a little bit better and some of them are not. And just thinking about them, but also the young women, you know, that went through Ventura, you know, and the youth DJJ for them, you know, thinking about them and their journeys, and hopefully, you know, all of them are in a good place today, you know, because that place, you know, a lot of folks, as we know, wasn't the best. It was not nowhere near anything that you can consider best or anything like that. But it was just, for me, my personal experience, I hated it. I was all the way in Preston, which is about almost like a 4.5-hour drive from Watsonville. And so it's a big thing, you know, and I can't stress it, but I think of it's a big thing, but it comes with its baggage and challenges. Understanding that California and some of our rural counties in California are still struggling in developing services, developing these not just services, but even jobs, y'all. Like these jobs and they're thinking that not just pay good, but have benefits and are fulfilling for people. And California struggling, and then in the midst of the whole pandemic. So it's an opportunity to do right by young people in California, you know, to do right by the ones who are young right now, the ones in the future, and the ones in the past. And I think it's it's an opportunity to acknowledge the harm that California did to all these young people, to all those ones that I met in there, and thinking about Leonardo Martinez, thinking about Freddie, thinking about all those guys, you know, that are gone, but thinking of like what's at stake and what are we gonna need? We need services, but what kind of services? We need culturally relevant, healing informed services. We're done about hearing about all our deficits and all our traumas. We know about that. You don't gotta tell me. You don't gotta continuously retell me about my deficits and my traumas. How about you tell me all about my blessings? How about you tell me about all the goodness that I am? How about you tell me about how sacred I am, you know, as my people would say it. And so I think we need to focus on programs like that. Need a focus on higher education pathways. I've heard stories, and I remember too, I didn't, this is not my personal experience, but talking to some of the younger people that I've interacted with, that they still doing scared straight, and they're taking people inside prisons. Why are you taking them inside prisons? Why don't you take them to a Harvard university? Why don't you take them to a Stanford, a UC Davis? You know, open up their mind, expand it, you know, but no, you continue to keep it narrowed in everything they know, you know, and that's prison lifestyle and all that. So really hoping that we're able to get it right, and investment doesn't just go straight into local incarceration infrastructure that is already built in counties. We're able to actually reimagine what youth development looks like in California and put it on steroids, you know, and fast track it. And that's what I think it means to me. It's bittersweet because I think of everybody that went through that place, but also think of, like, you know, what's to come. And I choose to be hopeful, and I choose to use my imagination to be able to create something better in my mind. And I know that that's the only way to move forward with imagining the best and creating something even better, you know, that we haven't thought of yet. So I'll pass it on to Cristian.
Yeah, gracias, Edgar, for that, you know, thorough analysis, if you would, you know, of your journey and the path, and just, you know, all the things that happened, all the folks that were impacted, you know. For me, it's 20 years too late, you know. I mean, yeah, am I happy that it's closing? Yes, but this place should have been shut down in 2000. You know, I believe there was a federal lawsuit took place 2001, somewhere around there. You know, it highlighted a lot of things that were wrong with just the environment, the climate, you know. I mean, folks are incarcerated, yes. Folks committed crimes, yes. Folks did bad things, yes. But folks also have an opportunity to change. And I think, you know, the environment didn't really allow for that, you know. You have to buy in, you know, and I think for some folks, oftentimes it's a job, you know, and we know that working with people in our communities and facilities, just in general, it's, you know, you have to have it in your heart, you know, and those persons closest to the problem are also those closest to the solution as well. And so, you know, I don't recall ever having, you know, anyone come into contact with us like that, or, you know, any resources that talked about that path, that talked about that journey, that talked about what's right with us, you know, the things that that were instilled in us by our mothers, our grandparents, all of our families. You know, we never lost that, you know. Matter of fact, you know, we had to fend for ourselves in our communities because, yeah, violence was out of control, you know. But we're not those systems to dictate that, you know. When 60% of your budget is going to law enforcement, well, then the thing to do is to pick folks up off the streets and make sure that 60% of the budget continues. And there was never diversion from that. And so I saw that discrepancy. And so I decided to get involved. And so, you know, now fast forward to this decision being made about closing the facilities. Yeah, you know, they're run down facilities. They're not well equipped. You know, there's Legionnaires outbreaks and, you know, stuff like that in the water. And, you know, I mean, this is rampant. This has been going on for a long time. You know, we've had numerous, incidents where you know, folks are assaulting minors, you know, staff, you know, that has happened as well. And, you know, it's covered up. It's really not talked about. It's singled out as an individual situation, but we all know that the environment dictates the behavior, you know. Yeah, they like to look at the behavior dictating the environment, but the environment's already set and the environment is controlled. And so if there's not anything done, then yeah, it's going to have an impact. If folks are in their room, you know, 22 hours out of the day, it's going to have an impact. If they're deprived of their sensory, sensory deprivation, there's going to be a reaction. If you're coming out to program in cages, there's going to be a reaction. You know, if you're eating bologna sandwiches 3 times a day for almost a month, you know, there's going to be, you know, repercussions from that, you know. And so, you know, the fact that it's closing now, I mean, yeah, you know, will we be able to redivert those funds and reinvest in a way to build back our communities? You know, who knows, you know? So I just, you know, would hope that, you know, folks out there really, you know, rally and advocate locally to ensure that, you know, funding does get streamed back into the community. It does just back into probation, that it doesn't open up another facility, that we don't go and get a juvenile hall that's almost going to be closed in San Francisco next year. And we decide, oh, we're going to place them in the juvenile hall and create a mini CYA, mini DJJ locally. You know, we don't want that to happen. So, you know, the decision has been made to move it forward, close it, right, with a timeline. But, you know, there's still so many conversations to be had. There's still so much action to take place. And again, you know, we feel as an organization, as MILPA, that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And, you know, we have yet to be approached, you know, from state or, you know, government entities or anyone, you know. But you could, you know, track our record in DJJ and what we do with young people, and we can determine and come to the conclusion that conditions do impact violence, you know. And so, you know, we're trying to change those conditions by, you know, creating this global circle of young men to talk about, you know, dignity, honor, integrity, the values, the responsibility that they have not only to themselves, to their families, but their communities, and you know, and the victims, you know, that were harmed in all of this. You know, we all have victims, and so we want to acknowledge them as well, you know, and continue the journey, you know, of healing and repairing and restoring. And so, yeah, you know, I know there's a lot of mixed emotions in there, but, you know, I don't think I've seen anyone from the government, from the governor's office, from DJJ, anyone that has apologized to the families, you know, to the families that have, you know, yeah, that have been impacted. You know, I've lost several friends, you know, to suicide, you know, coming from DJJ. That's long-term impact. You know, that's you know, that's abuses and torture and isolation and all these, you know, long-term impacts that come from, you know, that environment. You know, fortunately for us, we're survivors. We can't say that we're not scarred, but we're survivors. Oftentimes, you know, George can allude to this when he takes his turn. But, you know, when we first started going back into DJJ, there was a lot of trauma that we had to deal with that was coming up for us. Just going up in the gate and being questioned at the gate and being held up. And they're like, oh, no, you know, we got to run. And it's just like a whole flashback, you know, going into the gates, going into the same dorms, going into the same environments, you know, seeing folks in the room, you know, with rust and, you know, one bunk all tore up and there's only one person in there and they're going through it, you know, hot in the summer, cold in the winter. And you know, for us, there was 2 people in those rooms. So for us, you know, when we were in there, it was a little bit more drastic as far as the environment, you know, more people, you know, less space. And yeah, I have yet to see anyone come out and, you know, yeah, they're closing it, but the families deserve an apology. You know, the families deserve some closure. You know, the families of Mark Lorenzi, the families of Carlos Gomez, you know, they deserve some closure. You know, I keep them with me in my sleep and in my thoughts and in my prayers every single night. Doesn't matter how many years go by, you know. So this could be an accolade for folks, but for us, it's, you know, it's a way of life and it's a commitment to this way of life. You know, we've never lost these values. And so, yeah, a lot of mixed emotions, but I'll just go ahead and stop there and pass it to my colleague and hopefully he can share a little bit more on his sentiments of the closure of DJJ.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so for me, I'm also ecstatic. I'm very happy that the governor signed SB 823. It's been work in the making. I applaud all those that have worked endlessly for that bill to get passed. I feel like this is the definition of justice and what it looks like when those with the lived experience and prison ethnographers and community-based orgs and lawyers can come together in a comprehensive way to stop the injustice that have been happening at the DJJ. Some folks may not even know that they're spending over $350,000 per youth while in DJJ with 0% success rate. Within 3 years, you got over 75% that are going to recidivate. This is in California youth corrections. You also have, you know, the fact that, you know, they're put in cages when they're in outside programming. They're like taking away some of their programs for like talking back or minor infractions, like no restorative justice practice, like intervention or circles going on in there. It's really based on the old school, what's the matter with you, instead of what happened to you. As you know, there's research that the brain is not fully developed until you're 25 years old. So this is what the scientists or research has been talking about. And these punitive practices are not successful. They're doing more harm than they're doing good to our young people. Like Frankie Guzman, the lawyer, says, why invest in a plane that keeps falling and crashing down every time? It's the same thing with the Department of Juvenile Justice. I personally was there over for 3.5 years for a juvenile hall fight. Was given a felony, was given a gang enhancement at 16 years old. I think I was one of the first in Monterey County as a youth to get a gang enhancement in 1997, and it was for a fight. And so it's more of like the geography where you live in. Just because you live in Salinas, you can be vilified, just the way we have been vilified at MILPA before, for someone just having a drink or something like that. So but back to your question, Rosaura, about the DJJ, you know, people came home from that institution and we're not the same. I'm one of them. You know, I was given the opportunity to come to MILPA and work on my healing and cultural and meet a bunch of elders who taught us what the practice of healthy masculinity and how to be a good man. And so those institutions, as Chris alluded to, we go into them every Wednesday. We haven't since COVID happened, but not once were we disrespected in those institutions. Not once were those young people questioned us or asked us, "Hey, where are you from?" or none of that. They understood that we had street credit, that the community respected us for going in and doing our time and working for an organization. We had more problems with the staff in there. The staff would look at us dirty. One of us confronted me one time for being late, Chris and I, and he was just upset, having a bad day. You can tell he was overworked and was really hot, needed a break. That's what a guy needed, was a cup of water. But, you know, I've been searching that institution, you know, it's like, and I'm doing everything that I was supposed to do. Come back home, be a productive citizen, pay my taxes, stay out of trouble, go to school, get a job. I have all that. And so it's justice, because families will no longer be the same because of that institution. There's heart disease, there's suicide. One of my best friends committed suicide a year leaving that, Carlos Gomez, as we mentioned. And so we have to not forget about those people that suffer, not forget about the decades later, how the PTSD and depression and a bunch of other disorders happen from solitary confinement at DJJ. So we're very happy. We're happy that parents and the families and the young people in there are getting justice, and we're happy to have taken part in that process of changing their policies, of engaging their families, and letting the folks know that those close to the problem, as Chris mentioned, are close to the solution. And Brian Stevenson has another one where he talks about being proximate to the problem. It's like, if you've been through that situation, you've lived it, you're more likely going to be able to retain that or build a relation with it. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you all. Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing. And I feel like one of the themes that's coming up is like, if there would have been investment or buy-in from the very beginning in poor Black, brown children, essentially, you know, like, why would we need this model of incarceration, and what is it actually doing to provide any type of contribution to our society, right? And so in that case, in what way do you feel like we should be investing in young people that are still within DJJ, so that we don't repeat the model of DJJ, so that, again, we're actually providing them solutions to the root causes of many issues that really just come from, they stem from poverty, they stem from not any, like, the lack of opportunity. You know, people were saying, like, you, George, you're now in the graduate program, and Edgar's started his undergraduate program at UC Davis, and otherwise, like, people have been moving forward in their career journey and being able to do different things. But where was that when you were 12, 13, 14? And so we can start with you, George. You know, how do you feel like we should be investing in our young people?
Well, for me, one thing that I strongly feel should be invested in is the family dynamics, you know, the family health, education, reparations for the damage that was done to these young people. For me, like, one thing that stands out to me is, like, you know, the school to prison pipeline. You know, this is a practice where the schools, you know, use like zero tolerance policies to reprimand you for a minor infraction. Then it leads up to another infraction, and then you get suspended, then you ended up, you know, getting expelled. And it's, so there's a systemic racism, like, process from schools and being led to the juvenile halls. and so like one thing that stands out to me is like at DJJ, it's like 350,000 per youth that they're spending on that when they're not even able to give them a laptop or any access to outside treatment with or groups or programs, um like even with like outside community-based orgs, we haven't been able to go there since COVID happened. And I know like there was an outbreak that happened. So somewhere like just being able to have treatment, being able to have access to medical, being able to have counseling for those with PTSD, investing in the reintegration process, like there's always been this like this this unwritten rule by your probation. If you don't have a job or you don't have a school, you're going to go back to jail. Those are the only two options you have. So getting rid of a lot of the stigma from like probation and working on other alternatives that are successful. You know, community-based organizations, they have better success rates than any institution or foster care, you know, juvenile hall probation. So it's written there, but because we live in a very capitalist society where, you know, they're coming after Black and brown young people because of the surplus in labor. Look at California's built 22 prisons and 1 university since 1980. You know, that was, you know, during the deindustrialization age where hundreds of thousands of jobs were lost. And guess what? They, you know, this country built on racism. You see what's happening now. You know, it was about money. So these prisons, these 14 prisons that Ruthie Gilmore calls Prison Alley, it's right here in our backyard. So, you know, it's not a coincidence that these prisons are also located next to waste dumps. So there's an environmental hazard component to this too, and a lot of other hazards. But it's got to be though. It's got to be, you know, directed funding redistribution, not to the probation. Probation are the ones with the failing rates, but to the families and the community-based orgs and jobs. There's nothing more that these young people need are jobs and training and vocational skills. So thank you.
Orale. Thank you so much, George, for providing that insight. And Cristian, how do you feel like we should be investing in our young people that are still within DJJ?
Well, you know, for us at MILPA, we have a model and an approach, right? And it stems from an understanding, right? An understanding of our community, an understanding of our culture, you know, and our values. And I think the one thing that folks haven't done up to this day is ask the young people what they need. You know, I remember what I needed when I was a teenager, but I don't know if that's the same now. You know, and so I just think that whenever we're speaking on reinvestment, diversion, anything that's transitional, you know, it has to be inclusive and responsive to the population that is at hand, you know, and that may change, you know, from community to community. That may change from county to county. There are going to be some things that are going to be standard, right? You obviously need to, you know, public health is public safety. So if you invest in public health, we're going to have safer communities. Folks are going to be healthier. Folks are not going to be starving. Folks are going to have a place to live. There's going to be job opportunities. There's going to be learning opportunities. There's going to be opportunities to bridge the families and involve the family in that MILPA. You know, we're a family, as Edgar said. You know, we're no longer just friends and just community practitioners or, you know, employees. Like we are, you know, restoring the values in our entire community. And you know, these are our families, you know. If you look at our rallies, if you look at our events, you know, they're mothers that have lost children to the system. You know, they're wives of men who are in prison for life. You know, they're husbands of, you know, women who are in prison for life. You know, these are children that have parents that have been impacted oftentimes by nonviolent offenses in the system. And so, you know, this is the population that is now in DJJ, you know, generations later, 30 years later, 40 years later, of parents and grandparents who have been impacted by the system. And so we really need to be approaching to see what it is they need and approach it in a responsible way.
Orale. Thank you so much, Christian. Edgar.
Yeah, definitely. And thinking of the question as far as kind of just the investment, I'm thinking about investment, you know, and it's funny. George brought up $350,000 investment in the youth. And I know like California and its politicians and its legislators like to pat themselves on the back. Well, that's how much we care for our young people. That's how much we're willing to spend on them. Well, really? Is that really how much you care about them? You know, and it's troubling, you know, when I've heard legislators say these type of remarks, right? These are folks that have been voted in who at one point or another are considered leaders within their own communities, and it's very sad because I can only think of like what $350,000 that's spent 4.5 years there, y'all. Let's add that up. It's a little bit over $1 million, probably a little bit more. That would have changed my family's life radically. Not just mine, not just my mom's, my sisters, my brother. A lot of people in close proximity to us, lives would have been changed. Shit, it would have been changed with $100,000. You know, but that's not how that's not how the capitalism works, and that's not how life works, right? But investment starts with our imagination and the potential and the opportunity to create different things, and to be audacious in what we want to create and what we want to imagine. Not just conform to the practical, conform to what it has already been used, conform to what quote unquote best practices. Nah, this is nothing. Going to the moon didn't just happen because we followed the same steps. No, going to the moon took imagination and creativity by a collective group of people who had the will and the ganas to make it to the damn moon. Same thing is gonna take here. That's the same. That's what's gonna take. Ganas, determination, creativity, and imagination. Point blank. That's what our young people need. That's what everybody needs. You know, a lot of the problems that mire low-income communities, specifically communities of people of color, you know, and I can only speak from I come from Watsonville, predominantly agricultural town. Strawberries is what we know, you know, and folks used to say either gonna gangbang or work in the fields. What do you want, you know? And that was a reality. You know, our folks continue, you know, and MILPA being central and having an office space in Salinas, but also being a regional organization throughout Monterey County in the Salinas Valley that's what we see, you know, service jobs. You're gonna work in the service industries, or you're gonna work in the fields, right? And those are not good paying jobs, no benefits most of the time or nothing. So we need to have jobs, and not just any job. We need to have good jobs. Like Father Greg Boyle says, what stops a bullet? A good job, and not just a good job, but a good job with freaking benefits. And we need to have that. We need to have on-the-job trainings. We need to have, we need our communities to build better relationships with the unions, so we can get a lot of our folks unionized and get into the jobs that we need our folks in. We live in close proximity to Silicon Valley, and I'm now talking about Santa Cruz County and Monterey County. We live in close proximity. Monterey County is one of the counties that has overused DJJ, along with Santa Cruz County. They've sent young people over there like crazy. We live in close proximity to Silicon Valley, so a lot of the jobs and money that's centralized in that area, you know, should be invested in our communities. Why not? You know, and so I say all these things because the investment component is important, but education is important. Everybody knows that education inside a facility sucks. They'll give you a packet, finish it up, and then leave. The teachers are disillusioned with these students. Their level of creativity and imagination has been either shut down or stunted, or they just, you know, given up. It's now a job. It's a day-to-day thing. I just need to get through this and get back home. And so we need to invest in education, not this education that we know right now that it's a public education system. Now we need to recreate that too. We need individual case plans for each student, so they tell their individual case plans to the mode in which they learn. You know, we need to start adapting some of the techniques that universities use. You know, and that's as real as it gets. You know, and so I say the investments, we need to invest in mental health and behavioral health, but not from the way that we've been investing as far as a deficit-based or a trauma-informed. Now let's focus on healing-informed. Let's start changing the narrative on this. This is the only way we're gonna invest and create that. Probation, young people should not be under the guise of probation whatsoever. Probation is an institution that was built to incarcerate and oversee folks coming out of incarceration. And I don't think young people need that. Young people should have a place where their development is at the forefront. And I think for Monterey County and Santa Cruz County and just the Central Coast, we need that, as well as any other place too. We need that. We need an office of youth development that has community input in stake. And I think that's the most important thing. We need to continue to be able to provide different opportunities to young people. Not once when I was in there did they ever talk to me about taxes. Not once when I was in there did they tell me teach me how to open a bank account, go through that process, how to apply or fill out an application, how to make a resume or a cover letter, how to send an email. The digital divide in there is crazy, y'all. I came out not knowing how to send a freaking email. Can you believe that? I was 24 years old when I finally made it out. I did not know how to send an email. It was crazy. I didn't even know what a Google Doc or a Google Drive was. And you know, so it's important that we allow these different opportunities. We need to prepare these young people for the workforce of today, and not of yesterday, not of the 1970s and 80s, but of today. We need to have all the right tools for them to succeed. Programming is becoming more and more relevant. I saw that the governor passed a legislation to allow folks to get their records dismissed and closed to become firefighters. There's a bunch of young people that are in the system that were fighting fires too. Let's allow them to become firefighters as well. You know, let them get that good job with that good paying money. You know, and so there's many things that we can do for investment, but education is on the top, on the jobs second, but most importantly out of everything, investing in the family structure. Investing in the family structure, not just in the individual, but in the family structure. It is important. A healthy family means a healthy community. A healthy community means a healthy world. So I think that those are the things that we should be investing. Legislation, all these other things, these are band-aids. I believe so. We need to radically change the way we think at this moment in juncture in time. It's 2020. We're in the midst of a pandemic. We're in the midst of like bad forest fires. Everything's going bad as we can potentially think about it. So our imagination, our creativity needs to be put in the forefront. They say think inside the box or outside the box. My folks, as far as I understand, they've never thought in boxes or inside or outside of a box. They thought in circles. They thought in a circular way of thinking, and I'm gonna start doing that. You know, I'm gonna start looking at a circle and seeing something that is a whole. I'm gonna start looking at something that is whole, something that is all put together, and I think that's the only way that we can reinvest in everything and invest in things that are gonna help our young people be successful. Palabra.
Muchas gracias a todos. Something that came up for me when I was listening to y'all speak was definitely this idea that we're not taught to be critical thinkers. We're not taught to necessarily be business owners or to think about how to start a business or how to be the owners of production. Essentially, in this capitalistic society, we're taught to be workers, and we're taught to just kind of follow the process like an assembly line, right? And even thinking about like the debate, like looking at like who are the two people that are debating, it's like two old white men going at it, right? And I didn't even watch it, but it's one of those things that it's frustrating to kind of be in this place of how can we bring our cultura, our consciousness, our movement building into the mix, into the like our personality, our magic, into the way things are done in society. And so with that, like I kind of want to get y'all's opinions and perspective on, like, I'm going to go off track a little bit. This is not a question that was there, but something that came up for me is like, where did this idea come from of caging a young person to correct their behavior? And if we can start with George, and then you could popcorn to Cristian.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rosada. That's a great question. And, you know, as a community and development scholar and someone who's had the lived experience inside an institution, I've done a lot of research on prisons, and I've have found out where they came from, and you can do all the research you want in this continent, in South America, Canada. There was no prisons here. You can go back before Columbus came and the Europeans. There was no prisons here. We didn't believe in prisons. We believed, as Edgar was alluding to, circles. Prisons came from Europe. Dungeons came from Europe. That whole like ward of the child of the state, ward of the state. That's an old, it's an old Spanish term, parens patria, which means child of the state or children of the state. So that's already, through a historical analysis, we have to understand that those prisons, those juvenile halls were placed here because of the, conversion of Catholicism, Christianity and slavery. Like, you have to understand there's a lot of other historical implications that continue today in a different way. Yeah, we got rid of the kings and the lords and disciples, but nowadays you have the CEOs, the CFOs, the corporate, Amazon, Google, like they're the ones that are driving a lot of this extraction of oil, of land, and placing them in Honduras, South America, and paying the workers cheap. So then becomes a big a big imperial meltdown. And so thinking of that, like I just it just really it's bothering some that, like, then I think about the education system, how like they don't teach us the history. You go to classroom for 6 hours and you learn everything except yourself. So when you put that into perspective, you wonder why folks are colonized. They don't see eye to eye with us. You can't really, they say, oh, well, you live in that neighborhood, you must be from this neighborhood. Oh, East Oakland, West Oakland, East Salinas, North Richmond. It's like, well, you're not putting into perspective like the other, like redlining and rural redlining. These were practices that were designed to make our life a living hell, take away our jobs, strip our language, strip our cultures. Like, these are things that, like, are draconian, Spain, Europe, like that's where they come from. So I'll just get to the point, and thank you for that amazing question. I wasn't expecting that, but I've done my research, and that's where they come from. And a lot of people will tell you that, like, they have no success rates, and yeah. And I'll just leave it there. Thank you. I'll pass it to either Edgar or Cristian.
Yeah, thank you for that, George. Yeah, I mean, the history is important, how they came up with that structure and those designs, starting with, some of the maximum security prisons that were built, the Pelican Bays, the Kirkland Shoes, the high deserts, Tehachapi, these structures and these models, right, that were used as templates to strip people of their humanity, of their dignity, for people to lose all sensory deprivation, to not know what sunlight feels like, to not know what touch feels like, to not know, to be stripped of, community and surroundings. And all of us going through this COVID, understand those challenges, how hard that is, to not be around loved ones, to be so far away from loved ones, to want to see folks and be able to see folks, but there's a gate or a bar or a glass window or a plexiglass, separating you, as a form to strip your humanity, to strip your dignity, you to break down, right? And that's why so many folks, come home and commit suicide. That's why so many folks there commit suicide while in place, again, what they forgot is that we were seeds. They try to bury us, but we sprouted instead, and so here we are. Louder.
Definitely, it's actually pretty crazy. When you put that in, you ask that question. when you asked that question, Rosada, I was thinking about when I was reading a biography of Sitting Bull when I was younger. When I was, a matter of fact, in DJJ, and I was in I was in Ironwood doing my little SMP in Ironwood, and I remember saying that Sitting Bull, every time when he was rocking with the Buffalo Bills Wild West show and he would go to New York, he would walk through the streets of New York and he would give away his money to the kids. And that they would come up and tell Sitting Bull, like, why are you giving your money away? And he was like, these kids are sacred. He could not, in his mind, he did not fathom. And we don't have to go 500 years. This is like about probably like 100 in the 1880s, 70s, 80s, 1870s, 80s. But he could not fathom in his head watching kids be homeless and go hungry. That's not the way he was brought up. That was not his reality. But he went to the city and he saw this. It was just think about that, the notion that in his mind, it was backwards. That was backwards way of thinking, while at the same time they looked at him and they looked at someone that was backwards for his way of life. And just thinking about that, and you know, in a lot of indigenous cultures, you know, not just here in America, but in Africa and in East Asia, the child is sacred. You don't cross their fire. You don't disrupt that fire. Their link, just like they have the belly button and the umbilical cord connected to the mom for 9 months, they're connected to that sacred fire of their people. And you can't cross that. But in this, as our Uncle Smiley likes to say, in this suciedad, no es una sociedad, es una suciedad. You know, that's what we do. You know, in our communities have gobbled it out. They've rationalized it. It's okay for them now to do this. You know, to incarcerate someone that young. So it's very disturbing, you know, just thinking of like where it comes from. Also, when I was in YA, they had this book in Preston of the first young people that got shipped there from San Quentin. And this was like in 1989 or 98, 1898. The first kids that made it to Preston Castle, not to the Preston institution, but to the Preston Castle, came from San Quentin. San Quentin was a state prison. One of the, I think the oldest state prison in California, probably the oldest just here, right? And they were incarcerating young people there. And you see the pictures, I ain't gonna lie, the pictures are lightweight creepy. But they were incarcerating kids. And this has been going on for hundreds of years. And it just boggles my mind that it's so folks have in their minds rational lies. You know, they're trying to rationalize their lives, damn it. And it's crazy for me to think about that. And it's like, and even now, like, and I know young people are gonna make mistakes. Everybody has made a damn mistake, unless you're like, I don't know who you are, but everybody's gonna make a mistake. Some of us make worse mistakes than others. Some of us grow up looking at things and seeing things and growing up believing that it's okay to do certain things, but it's not, you know, and people mess up. But I will say something, that when I was in there, I only saw one or two white guys or white kids, poor white kids. Everyone else was black and brown, literally. And everybody that oversaw us were white people from the mountains and freaking foothills of Sacramento. Shit. Everybody's coming from an urban area where it's primarily Democratic and being housed in an area that it's primarily conservative, borderline. You know, shit, who knows? They might be racist in the mix. I know there was racist because I got called many times racist slurs when I was there. So just thinking about where this whole notion of it comes, like George said it best. George laid it out for you, like all the way down to the dungeons. You know, you ever watch Pirates of the Caribbean? They're always talking about these dungeons. They brought that from over there. Like literally, all that stuff comes from over there. You know, it sucks because I would like to tell you what our folks did here, but the reality is a lot of our culture was you know, specifically for the culturas in Mexico, a lot of it was eradicated. Our culture was disrupted. A lot of our folks had to go in hiding in the cultural practices of how to deal with certain things when harm is done. Because if they were to do that, they potentially can be arrested, incarcerated for practicing their way of life. And not up until 1978, was that allowed, you know? And so, you know, our indigenous people here in America, in the United States, have only had the right to pray in their way of life since 1978. And I bring that up because, again, they're in the midst of a battle to retain their culture and sovereignty. And that means a lot, because that is basically how they view their families, how they view their children, and why a lot of communities that are in and are indigenous don't look at incarceration as the first means to handle a youth with who's having a hard time with is having a hard time with puberty. Just think about that. They say that when you're going through puberty, you're like at the most unstable time in your life. So it's only reasonable, right? And so I say that, and I appreciate the question, but just thinking about, it's this lens that we live in, this lens that we choose to accept. We don't question. They said that the most radical thing to do is to question it. You know, question it. That's the most radical thing you could potentially do. Yeah, so I'll say that much, and I appreciate the question and palabra.
That's interesting. Yeah, I definitely appreciate all your responses. And on the topic of questioning, oftentimes in our childhood, when we do question, más te pegan, más te gritan. So it's like it's just this whole generational trauma. And in terms of the sensory deprivation that you brought up, Cristian, there's people that pay now. Like Joe Rogan advertises like sensory deprivation tanks, right? And it's like, there's people that fucking go through solitary confinement, right? And so that's another thing. And in terms of suicide, thinking about Khalif Browder and definitely all the folks that y'all have mentioned, and keeping those people in our prayers and in our thoughts, right? But also thinking about chancla culture and how like we oftentimes laugh at like, oh, chancla culture, like, you know, and like, I mean, it's like we laugh about this stuff, right? Like, me pegaron con el vacuum cord, or the freaking, the hanger, or like whatever, right? And it's like, it's kind of like we laugh about it, but it's also really painful. And like learning to talk about that generational trauma, like that's how we deal with children. So then how do we expect like the system, right? And just thinking about how like white supremacy and how like that just affects every facet of our lives, essentially, even though we are, however we choose to identify, indigenous, Mexican, Chicano, Chicana, right? Queer, however it is that we feel like who we are, right? It's the white supremacy seems to be the umbrella, and it could be really daunting and frustrating, right? And so I just appreciate like all y'all's expertise, and I'll end it with, what is your call to action to the young people of Salinas, of Monterey County, of the state of California, and just in regarding the closure of DJJ, but any like final words, las pantuflas too, anything that was, whatever was closest, honestly. It was out of convenience, but we can start with George, and you can pass it to Edgar, and we'll end with Cristian.
Cool, thank you. I appreciate that question. I mean, I guess for me, my call of action for our young people that are incarcerated, or even in the communities, is that, you know, there's always been the stigma that young people aren't as smart enough as older people, or that we're, you know, because our communities and the crime that's around and stuff that happens, we're deficits, and they never look at the gifts part, you know, and the sacredness and the street cred that young people in my neighborhood or in the neighborhoods have, and how much that will help us in anything in our walks of life. And so, like, for example, our young people that are incarcerated, if I had something to let them know, is that there's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing, you know, demonizing about them. There's nothing I said, but there's things that happened to them, you know, before they even went to the incarceration, things that were out of their control. Sometimes it's foster care. Sometimes it's, you know, marijuana, you know, that's, now it's legal now, but like folks like myself and a bunch of other people during the Clinton era used to go to jail for that. So like, and that there's people in the community that are fighting for them and that have not forgotten about them, and that we're doing our best to ensure that the DJJ continues to dismantle itself, continues to redistribute the power and the funding back to our communities, not to where institutions that, again, as I mentioned, have no success rate, and It's too expensive, and it's gotten it way out of control with the violence that has happened in there, and the recidivism rates. And so, and another thing is that let those young people know that their body can restore itself and transform itself. It can heal itself. It can literally bring back that that man or that person that has been damaged or deprived in solitary confinement or for a non-violent offense. And so that your body can replenish itself and rebirth itself to a healthy man. And that's basically what I feel has happened to me since I've been involved with MILPA, a big transformation. And it was a community as well that supported me. They didn't turn my back and look at me as I was a deficit. Like, my own community embraced me back, with respect. And so that's how we roll. That's how we do it. And we love our young people that are locked up. And, yeah, hopefully in the next year that DJJ can actually close and young people can be close to their families. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Aho.
Edgar, feel free to take it away.
Yeah, definitely. But thinking about I'll just, before I go dive into that, I just got to touch on this before I move forward. If not, I'm gonna hold it in my chest. And the intergenerational trauma and the whole chancla culture comes from the component of, like, I'd rather beat my kid than the master to beat my kid, because I know the master will kill my kid. I know that the don and the overseers and the como se llama, in the plantations will beat my kid, to death. So that's where it comes from. I think so. Just in doing some of the readings and research, that I believe that's where it comes from. And it's been intergenerational. At one point or another, it got lost. So I really wanted to say that, because sometimes our families don't know how. They don't even know what intergenerational trauma means or looks like. It's just what it is. That's what I was taught, and that's what I'm gonna do. But that's our job, to do that. And I think my call to young people, in Monterey and Salinas, Santa Cruz, everywhere, heal, go through that healing journey. Don't get caught up with the BS, y'all. There's a lot of it out there. There's a lot of distractions. You can have that cell phone. That cell phone will distract you. But focus on your healing. Be intentional with that. Take care of your body. Take care of your mind. Because that's what you got. And we only got it for a little bit of time. You think a year or two will take forever. Wait till you hit your 20s, and then you hit your 30s, and then your 40s. And then everything just speeds up for some reason. I'm not, I'm still in my 20s, y'all. Just say that. But I know for a fact that it's starting to speed up for me. And but I've heard of older people say that, that it speeds up, and next thing you know, you're thinking like, damn, where'd my life go? So really focus on that, on your healing, and but get involved in your community. Get involved with anything that moves you. We're at a critical juncture right now, y'all. The murder of innocent Black people throughout the country is crazy. It's been happening, but now people are getting recorded, and people feel some type of way and they want to get involved. But don't just get involved because it's the heat of the moment. Literally set your intentions, get involved. If that means that you can do one thing, and that's vote, which is going to matter in November, vote. If that means participating in an organization such as MILPA, do it. If that means providing a service of helping your fellow peer build a resume or a cover letter, do it. Of helping someone else how to navigate a computer, do it. Share your humanity with one another, which is the most important thing. Be courageous to speak for those that can't speak for themselves. Walk with your heart in your hand and your other hand in the ground. So being close to the community, but always speaking with your corazón. And strive. Don't let nothing. There's always going to be bad times, and there's going to be good times. That's a part of life. I don't want to say you got to power through it. Just navigate it. Just like if you were driving and you'd get lost, hey, you're going to have to figure it out because your GPS might not work. Just drive on one road, see where it takes you. You might hit another road. That road might take you somewhere else, but somehow, somewhere, you're going to figure it out and you can get back home. You always get back home. And home might not necessarily mean your parents' house or something like that, but home is where you make it. And I forgot where I heard that in the movie. Oh, Waterboy. No, is it Waterboy? I don't know, but it's one of those movies. It's one of those. And but yeah, y'all, like, and I really just really heal and be willing to serve others. You know, put your ego aside and serve those that you really love and care for, and help reimagine a different community. Palabra.
Yeah, thank you for that, George and Edgar, and for the question. You know, I think, you know, some of the messaging that was you know, branded to myself, my generation, and folks in our communities when we were younger is that we wouldn't live to the age of 25, that we'd be dead or incarcerated. And that message, that continual message from media, from marketing, from you know, just movies and things like that, which we all know was a ploy to deter us from our real vision. You know, it implanted that vision, and that became a reality for so many of us. Where you know, folks from my community and from the folks that are on this podcast, this community, you know, we either, you know, ended up dead or in jail for a very long time. You know, and so we survived that. And so I tell, you know, the young people out there not to lose your vision. You know, dream big, you know, reach for the stars, if not further, you know, and don't lose sight of what you want to be and what you want to become, you know, and with that vision, you know, help others, you know, to find their purpose and their vision. And it does all start with the healing, right? Because it's not what's wrong with you, it's what's right with you, you know. And so if you're a young person out there, everything about you is right. You're right in the position that you're supposed to be. And I speak from the heart. I'm a father, you know, so you know, for me, it is about the next 7 generations. It is about, you know, teaching our young ones to dream, to envision, to pursue, you know, a new norm, you know, for our kids. You know, it's not about you know, going to prison or ended up dead in the streets due to you know, gun violence. For our generation, it's like, you know, procedure and practice around police who are so quick to draw their guns and impose, you know, their authority with the threat of violence as well, you know, which is something that they're trying to protect of, but it's what their model is based on, you know. And yeah, so many of our, you know, Black, brown, indigenous, you know, people in poor communities, you know, are lost to you know, violence by, you know, law enforcement. And so again, all this stuff is meant to deter your vision and throw you off track and get you to think that it's a fight between us and the police. It's not a fight between us and the police. You know, our fight is within ourselves to keep our values, our humanity, our culture, our tradition, our heritage, our history. You know, we got to keep all of that. And so don't lose sight of that. You know, your heart will tell you, you know, what way to go and what to do. On another note, I'll say, you know, each one teach one. You know, if there are tools that you're learning throughout your process out there as a young person, if you've been, you know, blessed to be in a space with some elders or some, you know, multi-generational teachings, you know, teach that to your little brother, teach that to your little sister, you know, pull in one of your peers and say, hey man, let me bring you to this meeting or to this spot, you know, come with me to MILPA, you know, come with me to the gym, you know, we're going to go watch this, you know, championship, you know, fighter over here, you know what I'm saying, spar and you know, maybe inspire some of us, you know. So I would say that to the young people as well. And then, you know, lastly, it's just, you know, keep decolonizing, you know, keep, you know, they say, okay, now that you're woke, get your ass up out of bed, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, it is an ongoing process. You know, the decolonizing of our mind, body, and spirit, you know, our consciousness is very important. You know, we have to be aware of what George is talking about, the history, the timeline, where these things originated. And so, you know, it's very important to be conscious of your story, your family's story, the origin story, and then also that vision of where you want to go. So don't lose sight of your values, you know, listen to your heart, and everything will, you know. And also, lastly, It's very important. Keep prayer in your practice, you know, or whatever higher power that it is that you call upon or you practice, you know, own it, embrace it, you know, and yeah, just practice.
Beautiful. So con eso, we'll wrap up this episode of the Milpa Show. Thank you to our guests, George, Edgar, and Cristian. If y'all want to connect with, any one of them, definitely hit up our social media, our website, whatever, so that we can connect you. And with that, gracias. Thank you for joining us today. Peace out.